On today's show, Russell Westbrook has finally been traded. His tenure with the Clippers has come to an end. The Clippers got Kris Dunn back from the Utah Jazz. Did they win or lose the trade? Are they better or worse after this? Going to be talking about it all and more on today's Locked On Off-Season Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, and going to be heading into my 20th season as a Clipper fan this fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure if you can't watch it on YouTube, where you should subscribe, and let me know what you think of the move. Russell Westbrook being traded to the Utah Jazz for Kris Dunn, his tenure as a Clipper coming to an end. Going to be talking about his best moments as a Clipper, why it didn't work out for him, how we look at his tenure as a Clipper as a whole, and of course, the addition of Kris Dunn. But before we do that, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Well, Russell Westbrook has officially been traded. We knew it was coming to an end very soon. Russ opted in to his $4 million deal. I guess because the open market, no one really wanted him. Now, he's been traded to the Jazz, which completes the sign and trade with Dunn. Clippers end up getting Dunn. And then Russell Westbrook is now being traded to the Utah Jazz again and being bought out by the Jazz. So, by the way, the full trade is Russell Westbrook and a second-round pick swap and cash to the Jazz in a sign-and-trade agreement for Kris Dunn. Now, here's the thing, right? I feel bad for Westbrook. I mean, not really bad for Westbrook in the sense that he got traded to the Jazz twice, but he's going to end up getting bought out, and he's going to the Denver Nuggets. So that's an interesting move for Russ, but this is Locked On Clippers, not Locked On Nuggets. If you want to watch Locked On Nuggets, go over to those guys. They're great. Swipe Adam Mars and Matt Moore. Clippers are also sending the draft rights to Balsa, spelled like salsa with a B, Koprivica, the 57th pick in the 2021 NBA draft, the right to swap 2030 second-round picks with Utah, and $4.3 million in the Westbrook Dunn sign and trade. That is from Woj. So, Russell Westbrook is gone. Did the Clippers get better? I actually think yes. Now, you might be thinking, how the heck did they get better if they got a Kris Dunn instead of Westbrook? Here's the thing. You're just looking at name if you think that. Russell Westbrook is a better player than Kris Dunn. He can do more things on the basketball floor. I don't think Kris Dunn is capable of having a game like Russell Westbrook had against Phoenix last year. Like, just that kind of performance, I don't think Kris Dunn is capable of that. His highs aren't as high. But he's never been a superstar. He's never been an MVP. He doesn't have that ego. He just wants to contribute to a winning team and be a part of a championship contending team's rotation. And here he has the opportunity to do that now. The Clippers wanted to get this done. They got this done. And here's what's going to be great about Kris Dunn. He is just going to guard. That's what he's going to be out there for. Now, his jump shot, not the best. I'm a huge fan of Kris Dunn. He went to Providence. He was amazing there. He got drafted in 2016 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So he'll be going into his 9th season. He's bounced around. He was on the Chicago Bulls for 3 years. Then he went to the Atlanta Hawks for 1, but he only played 4 games for them. And then in 2022, he only played 14 games with the Portland Trail Blazers. But these last 2 years with Utah, he's kind of found a resurgence. The 22 games he played for the Jazz in 2023, only 22 games, I said. He averaged 13 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 6 assists, and a steal. So that got the Jazz front office to say, man, we got to definitely bring him back. Last season, he played 66 games, started 32, averaged 5 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists on 47% shooting and an improved 37% from 3. Because when he first got into the league, he was a poor 3-point shooter. He didn't even shoot over 36% till 2023. So he's gotten a lot better at that. Off the bench, I think it's a perfect role for him. He knows his role. I don't think it's going to be like Russ where he's upset that he's not a starter. He's not a starter in the NBA really on a good team. This is who he is. If he can be that, we don't even know if he can be a backup on a championship team because offensively, he's not much of a creator, right? But he can get downhill a bit. He's an improved 3-point shooter, and more than anything, he really is a great point of attack defender. And I've been saying we need more guys around Terrence Mann, and now we have that. Right now, I think our point of attack defense is actually going to be one of our strong suits, which is fantastic. Fantastic. And here's what I think about Kris Dunn. Yes, he won't have the highs of Russell Westbrook. He can't affect a game like that. But he won't have the lows where he misses a ton of layups. He's going 100 miles per hour, not knowing, doing a little too much. Shooting a bunch of threes when he's not really good at them. The careless turnovers. He might have some careless turnovers, but we know the Russell Westbrook and Paul George turnovers. Those dangerous live ball ones that change momentum. When look no further than this year's playoffs. When it's bad for Russ, it can be really bad for Russ. And, you can say all these things about, because he wasn't being used the way he's supposed to, all this. I think Kris Dunn is just an easier player to plug in right now, which is what makes him better for the Clippers. Russell Westbrook is a guy you got to cater things around him. Same with James Harden. You don't want a guy that's that high maintenance to me off the bench when they're, Russell Westbrook is going to come off the bench for Denver. We'll see how much of playing with Jokic and Murray changes his role because he's probably going to come off the bench over there as well. And they're a better team than the Clippers, but they don't have a guy that handles the ball as much as James Harden. They play more of a ball movement centered offense with off-ball movement with Jokic in the high post playmaking out of there. But we'll see. At the end of the day, I think this is a very solid move for the Clippers. Now, the question is, what does that mean for Bones Highland? Because we already have Norman Powell that's going to come off the bench. You got Amir Coffey. You want to have some length, or Amir Coffey or Jordan Miller, Kobe Brown. Those guys are competing for that spot. Norman Powell is the sixth man, which is a good role. It's a very good role for him. But we need a shot creator off the bench. It can't just be Kawhi and James Harden. And Kris Dunn doesn't exactly make me feel confident. A lineup of Kris Dunn, Norman Powell, Amir Coffey, Mo Bamba, and Nico. That doesn't really, if we are healthy, we have to stagger Kawhi and James Harden with that personnel, because otherwise we're just not going to get good enough shots. If one of them misses a game, I really don't know how our offense is going to be. But I'll tell you what, the fact that our defense is going to be so much better, it's going to keep us in games. But this is where we got to really we got to really implore if it's a Zubats to be more aggressive. And I hope the coaching staff is like, look, Zoo, there's a lot of reasons why, okay, let's put it this way. Zubats to me is easily our third best player, right? Easily. I think that might apply to the offensive end of the floor as well. Actually, you know what? Okay, you can make an argument for Norman Powell, but I think Zubats is better than him. Both ends of the floor, rebounding, that stuff matters. So I'm taking Zoo, right? Norm's our third best scorer. Now, we got to maximize Zoo. At this point, we don't have Paul George. So there's no excuse. You don't have Russell Westbrook, which is another mouth to feed in terms of having the ball in his hands. Zoo is one of the better low post centers in the league. I'm saying top 10 in that regard. Now, his playmaking out of the post, that might need some work. But how is he going to get work and improve in that regard if he's not getting the reps in game? How else is he going to improve? Just in practice? There's nothing that simulates quite like an NBA game. You got to get him the ball. And with all the switching that's done in today's game, come on. We struggle to get the ball in the paint. And next season, I guarantee you that will be a thing, especially with, Russell Westbrook leaving, and you're going to have Paul George out of the picture. Not that he got to the paint a ton, but he got to the paint more than most of our other players. And then Bones Highland is likely going to get traded. So Because that's the thing with this Kris Dunn move. Another takeaway, besides that the Clippers improved off this, in my opinion, is that Bones Hyland is probably on the way out. We just signed Kevin Porter Jr. I don't know where he fits in the rotation. I don't think he does, to be honest, in terms of consistent minutes. I don't know if Ty's going to go 11 deep. Ty's got some decisions to make. He and Jeff Van Gundy on the coaching staff before the season begins. But my overall takeaway is that we got better with this move. We did. And I think Russell Westbrook, this move is great for him as well. I think the Denver Nuggets absolutely improved with Russ instead of Reggie running that second unit. And then I think our defense is just going to be so much better. It should be, at least. Kris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., Terrence Mann, Kawhi Leonard. I'm liking that. But coming up, why did it not work out for Russ with the Clippers? We'll talk about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So Russell Westbrook has been traded to the Utah Jazz in a sign and trade for Kris Dunn, who will now be coming off the bench for the Clippers. Big time move. Russell Westbrook's tenure in LA has come to an end. He played for both LA teams. And why did it not work out? So by the way, Kris Dunn's deal is $17 million over 3 years. So that's a decent little number, a little over $5 million a year. Let's talk about, though, Russell Westbrook, right? Why didn't it really work out for him as a Clipper? You know, it's really unfortunate. I don't think that Russell Westbrook's time as a Clipper, in my opinion, is one to look back on fondly, quite frankly. I think there were some really solid moments in there. But I think the Clippers did Russ a little dirty in this sense. And I've talked about it at length in this podcast. And I know a lot of people don't agree. And it really just comes down to what you think of Russell Westbrook as a basketball player. But I'm going to keep it a buck. Like, everyone remembers, if you've been listening to me long enough, that even though I'm a Russell Westbrook fan, I didn't want him on the Clippers. I thought Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were making excuses and, you know, not taking enough responsibility by wanting a point guard and trying all these different guys, Rondo, John Wall, to try to be that guy and just kind of, you know, essentially ducking or minimizing their offensive responsibilities and the way this team is constructed. Now, Paul George publicly advocates for Russell Westbrook when his stock is at an all-time low, having played his 2 worst seasons of his NBA career, probably with the Lakers, or season and a half. And then he comes, and I'm thinking to myself, like, look, this season's already chalked. We're not going to get a top 4 seed. Russell Westbrook in the playoffs, he makes me nervous. I'm not supportive of this move. But now that he's here, he is also one of my favorite players. I'm all in. I got to see what it's like. And after that first game against the Kings, that second highest scoring game ever, I was like, man, I see the vision. You know, we hadn't had a point guard that quite had that passing ability in the 2-on-3 era that was hitting Kawhi and Paul George right when they came off a screen in the shooting pocket. That was noticing guys up ahead and throwing nice lob passes to Zoo. These different things, we just didn't have that yet. And seeing that, and also the one thing we lacked, getting to the basket, athleticism, paint touches. Russell Westbrook was checking off all those boxes. And another thing we lacked after Pat Bev left was that vocal leadership, that Energizer Bunny. With this level of seniority. I know Terrence Mann's kind of an Energizer Bunny, but with a level of seniority, Russell Westbrook, guy that pumped up the crowd. Started out rough, was 0-5. A couple of those games, of course, without Zubats. That one last game against the Kings without Kawhi. This is obviously talking about the 2023 season. And then we went on that 4-game winning streak right before Paul George got hurt. PG goes down. Russ and Kawhi, trudge on the rest of the way. Great memories in those first 2 games against Phoenix, especially that game 1. Probably my favorite win after the 2021 playoffs in all of our games. That game 1 against Phoenix, because I legit thought we were going to beat. You can go back and check my Locked On Clippers episode for that. After game 1 against the Suns, I legitimately thought we were going to beat those suckers without Paul George. And Russ and Kawhi, playoff Kawhi. Russ was 3 for 17, or was it 3 for 19? 3 for 19 and still made the winning plays at the end of the game. And then when Kawhi went down, that was rough, man, especially for Kawhi, of course, and all the fans. Both 2-on-3 duo out. Russell Westbrook playing in front of a sold-out Clipper playoff crowd before Kawhi Leonard did in games 3 and 4, and he put on a show. He got us to compete in those games. We really shouldn't have been. And, yeah, we fell short in that series. We didn't win a game after game 1, but I think we all admired Brody's effort and what he still showed that he could do. And, it felt like everything went great. We gave him that point guard role, that starting point guard role that he had lost with the Lakers, and said, look, you're the point guard that we've needed. Paul George is advocating for you publicly. The media was so great to Russ, too, the local Clipper media. And everybody made an effort to make him feel wanted. The fans did it as well. To make it, honestly, just everything that wasn't shown from the Lakers side. But again, the price tag matters, right? Russ had a different level of expectations with the Lakers, and the fit was just worse. And then we get to the conversation of this summer and why it didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? Because Lawrence Frank never wanted him. That's why. Lawrence Frank did not want Russell Westbrook. We knew that last season when he said, a point guard that can shoot. That's not Russ. There's a lot of things that Russell Westbrook can do right now. Shooting the ball well is not one of them. Sorry to say. Last season, Russell Westbrook shot in the regular season 45% from the field, which was actually the best he has shot since 2020. 45% from the field, 27% from 3, 69% from the line. So not the best shooting splits. The 45% is pretty good. But, man, he does still smoke a lot of layups. And his mid-range is nowhere near what it once was. I don't know why his jumper declined as much as it did. If you look at his mechanics, they are different a little bit than when he was younger. I think he shoots it more on the way down nowadays. He's also had a plethora of hand and finger injuries over the course of his career. And he has lost a little bit of elevation on that shot. But it's also confidence as well, the mental game, in my opinion, with that. When he doesn't think, he shoots a little bit better. But the biggest thing for me is the mid-range game. Because he used to have a very solid mid-range up until about 2017. I remember the first playoffs I noticed, I'd have to go back and watch 2018 because he still had some big scoring games in that series. But 2019, I remember everything was broke. He still could average a triple-double, but everything was broke in that Portland series. I know he had a couple of injuries here and there, but even Houston, the jumper wasn't really on. He was just so explosive and playing off of Harden. And he was just, locomotive. Looks very healthy that season. But, yeah, when Lawrence Frank in the summer was trying to trade for Malcolm Brogdon, that was an effort to replace him. Then he still tried to get James Harden, got James Harden, and I knew when we got James Harden that was a replacement. That was part of my hesitation with Harden. It's like, what is that going to mean for Russ? And I know a lot of people in the devil's advocate is going to say, forget about Russ. Harden is better than him. That's facts, but again, I'm looking at how do we maximize every player on this team. And I know how Westbrook is. And clearly the Clippers front office, Clipper people did not. And my thing is this, if you're going to look to replace the guy in the summer, you got to have a little bit more back. Because there's not much more that Russ could have done, in my opinion, to help his case to stay with the Clippers. He did very well, in my opinion, late in that 2023 season. What more did you want? What more did you expect, right? And he came back. But the fact that Lawrence Frank didn't trust him as that starting point guard, that means he never trusted him, and no matter what he did, his mind wasn't going to change. So for me, I don't know what the conversations were behind the scenes with 213, Ty Lue, and Lawrence Frank before it happened. But if you're just going to sign a guy and look to replace him in the summer, you should have never signed him at all. You should have stood your ground. I mean, what are Paul George and Kawhi going to do? Request a trade in the middle of the 2023 season when we're on a winning streak with Point Terrence Mann because we're not getting them their point guard? That would be insane. I just don't believe that would have happened. So I think Lawrence Frank should have stood his ground and then would have never had to deal with the whole Westbrook Harden debacle and saga and that whole drama about Russ volunteering to go to the bench. We didn't actually volunteer. I mean, this past year was just a drag. I love the beginning of the season. It looked like we had done that whole training camp based on, you know what Law Murray said when he came on the show, if you were listening to the episode? The fast-paced, transition-based training camp that was centered around a Russ, Bones Highland kind of mold. We get James Harden. That totally switches. Now we're just an elite half-court offense with a great pick-and-roll player, something that Russ just isn't nearly as good at. So that really replaced them. I mean, you know, everybody knows we tried the starting lineup with all four of them plus Zubats, and it just didn't work out. Too many cooks in the kitchen, not as many defined roles. And Russ went to the bench, and you saw games where he would have a great impact. You saw games where he couldn't coincide or coexist with Harden. You saw that get a little bit better throughout the season. But ultimately, Russ, off ball as much as he was, it just wasn't. And not playing with Kawhi and Paul George as much because, you know, the whole point was to have him around 2-1-3. So him playing off of Kawhi and Paul, those guys being able to minimize his weaknesses with their contested shot-making ability and Kawhi's mid-range ability, that is what Russ was brought in to do. And he minimizes, the 2-1-3 minimizes Russ's deficiencies. But when Russ is playing with only one of them or sometimes none of them and just Harden, that just wasn't ideal for me. And a lot of times he doesn't have the ball in his hands, not getting to push the pace. So it just became tough. And then there were some games where he would play 6-minute spurts and then he would come out. And it just felt like that conversation was constant every single game. More Russ minutes. Oh, Russ should have played more. And it was just like, it was very exhausting. Like I want somebody in that role that's going to accept being in that role. That's going to embrace it. And that's it. And I love Russell Westbrook, but it didn't work out because Russ is stubborn. He wants a certain role. He doesn't play the same when he doesn't get his way. That's just a fact. And because Lawrence Frank was just kind of whacking all this, in my opinion. You sell a guy on something. Look, you're the point guard. Paul George advocated for him. You're the guy. The fan base, kind of builds a bond with him in that postseason, and you look to replace him with his friend. It's like, why wouldn't he be upset? I don't blame Russ at all. But that's why it didn't work out. Coming up, though, how are we going to reflect on Russ's time as a Clipper? How should the Clipper fan base feel? And how should we feel about Kris Dunn? Going to be talking about that coming up. All right. So to close things out, how do we reflect on Russ's time as a Clipper? For me, I think I'm not bitter towards Russ at all, really. Russ is who he is. We should have known that when we got him. He wanted to come start on this team. He didn't want to be replaced by his friend. And I think when we got Harden, he didn't think he was going to get replaced out of the starting lineup. I think Russ thought he could make it work. But I personally don't think Russ is the best evaluator of talent in terms of chemistry in the NBA because he and LeBron thought those guys could work. And granted, Anthony Davis was injured for a lot of those games, but when I watched those guys play, that never screamed championship team. And going into the season, they had the highest odds out of the West to go to the finals. So, yeah, I'm not going to miss the discussion, the discourse around Westbrook and seeing him in the role that he was in. I'm not going to miss that at all. But overall, I think Russ's time as a Clipper was fun. When it was on and he was on, there was nobody better at interacting with fans in the crowd. I mean, this guy was electric. Going to games with him when he was on, when he was making momentum-shifting plays, it was special. You love those kind of guys. Pat Bev, Montrezl Harrell, even Blake a little bit, Blake Griffin. These guys embraced the crowd, but Russ is all-time great with the crowd. And that was special. We got to chant Brody for him in 207, and he sometimes would point over to that section, and that was special. And that 2023 playoffs, seeing him carry the team, even though that wasn't the way it was supposed to be, I think that just made Clipper fans feel very, not indebted to him, but just he won Clipper fans over a lot. during that. And you started seeing the Westbrook jerseys all the time. And one thing about Russ is, no matter how unprofessional he might have been, no matter what Instagram post he liked about Kawhi should be traded or whatnot, for the most part, Russ always played hard for us. He did. Sometimes he was out of control. He missed layups. But for the most part, he played hard. Would he have his lapses defensively? Yes. Was he a bad shooter? Yes. But he brought it most nights that he played for us, more than other guys on the team. And it was just special for me as a Russell Westbrook fan to have him on the team. Even though I wasn't, for it at first, I had to buy in. And I never thought the Clippers were going to win a championship with Russ on the team, but it was fun rooting for him. He really is a fun guy to root for. But I know some people think that he's so polarizing. Some people think he is. Some people don't think he is. I know there's a lot of people that are so happy that he's gone. I am happy I don't have to deal with a lot of the Russell Westbrook stands that are just absolutely outrageous, especially on social media, Twitter particularly. But I will say this, a lot of the Russ fans that supported this channel, my own channel, I do really appreciate you. I hope you still tune into my shows and you still tune into Locked On Clippers. And absolutely go support the boys over at Locked On Nuggets. But I really do hope you guys stay here because, I think Clipper fans will reflect fondly on Russ as a player and as a Clipper. And, the way we tried to make him feel when he first left the Lakers. And I don't think that Russ has any bitterness towards the fans personally. And I think he's going to be well received when he returns. But it's sad that neither LA team worked out for Russ. That being said, the fact that he's such a legend in LA is part of why he doesn't get booed with the Lakers, even though it went so badly for him there. So I expect even better when he returns to the Clippers. But Clipper fans, Kris Dunn is going to be fun, man. He's going to be fun. I loved him at Providence. He's a hardworking guy. He went from the G League to now being back in the league. This guy was a high pick. It was no joke out of Providence. He was the 5th overall pick in the 2016 draft by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Came off the bench that season. Just averaged just 4 points a game. But here's the thing. Shot 38% and 29 from 3. So it wasn't very efficient. I'm pretty sure he went to Chicago in the Jimmy Butler trade. And then there he actually started 43 games in 2018. But the Bulls obviously were a very bad team. But he was 23rd in the most improved player voting. 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists that second year. So that's when he started showing some potential. Still wasn't shooting too great, but big improvement from the first year. 43%. 32 from 3. And then 2019, started 44 out of 46 games, averaged 11 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. So he's a pretty solid passer. 42.5% from the field, 35 from 3. So that was a career high at the time. Then the 2020 COVID season, he played 51 games, started 32 of them, and averaged just 7 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He got 5 less minutes than the 2019 season. And he shot 4 less shots. Shot 44% from the field, 26 from 3. And yeah, then he's been bouncing around. But happy for him, and I think we should be excited for him. I'm just curious to see, are we going to roll with Kris Dunn and Norman Powell, and that's it? Where does Kevin Porter Jr. fit into that? And what are we going to get for Bones? Because the trade should be coming. Right now we have 15 guaranteed contracts with Bones included, not counting Kai Jones, who's on a training camp deal. So we'll see. And, of course, Jordan Miller's fighting for a standard contract. I don't think he's going to get one. I think they're going to try to, he's on a 2-year two-way. So, anyway. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to this channel and my own channel for even more content. Hit the notification bell so you know every single time we post a video. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers. Make sure you're listening on audio if you can't watch the show. And keep giving me episode suggestions. But right now, we're loving the content. How about Clippers Summer League next episode? Let's see how we do in that game. Can we be 4-0? The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.